A Star is Born is the story of an aging artist who falls in love with a young and talented ingenue and becomes infatuated with her talents. As he helps her reach a meteoric rise to stardom, his worsening addictions, fast irrelevancy, and burning envy and resentment over her success begin to spiral his career downwards. The story is one that is so consistently compelling, relatable, and timeless that it manages to find itself with a new film version every generation, each one with its own spin on the tale. The two earliest films are set in the movie world of old Hollywood, while the latter two are set in the music world. Each film manages to capture the filmmaking styles of its own era and the sensibilities of their era's social culture. Sensibilities which, might I add, haven't changed all that much in the last 80 years. Perhaps that is why this story has remained so relevant all this time later. With a fourth version having just hit cinema screens, I thought it would be a great opportunity to revisit all of Hollywood's different adaptations and rank them all in order of my own personal preference. Let's break a leg. Coming in at number 4, 1976, Barbra Streisand and Kristofferson. While I certainly understand the cult appeal of this one, especially amongst Streisand fans, this is easily my least favourite version of Star. Streisand and Kristofferson certainly don't have the same chemistry as the others, and in fact their on-screen relationship doesn't even really seem like the focus of the film, with focus seemingly put on the characters individually. The two seemingly fall in love without any build-up or magnetism. It just kind of happens, leaving the audience with very little connection and wondering, how? Why? I'm not sure if it was the purpose of this specific version, but I never once felt that these characters were actually in love, but instead using each other for their own vanity. I guess it makes for a more melodramatic film, but the story loses its spark along the way. The music in this one isn't as fun, the performances aren't as great, production values aren't as flashy, and overall, the movie doesn't have the energy or passion of the others. The movie moves at a snail's pace and just kind of feels like a total bore. Each adaptation is certainly a product of its own era of filmmaking, which I guess is the point of this tale being retold generationally. However, where the films of the 30s and 50s capture the beautiful magic of their era, and the 2018 one captures a frenetic modern energy, the 70s version just seems so 70s. It really is a tough one to get through. At number 3, 1954, Judy Garland and James Mason. It almost feels a little bit sacrilegious to put the Garland version of Star so low, especially considering the movie is commonly regarded as the best version and one of the greatest musicals of all time. To me, overall, this movie just feels like a vehicle for Judy Garland's talents later in her career, and while that is perfectly fine, it leads to a movie which isn't exactly the strongest adaptation of the source. At 3 hours, this one is a slow burner, which seems to come to a halt continuously with gorgeous, big, flashy musical numbers, and thus the rise to fame of Garland's character doesn't seem as meteoric or as riveting as the others. Everything that happens in this one unravels very, very slowly and almost feels too glamorous along the way, all of which kind of seems to go against the narrative of the tale. The fall to grace of Mason's character likewise doesn't seem quite as pronounced, as he's already at rock bottom at film start. His resentment towards his lover is also very underplayed, leaving the movie without that very important extra layer. Both Garland and Mason do deliver incredible performances, and yes, this is a brilliant movie and one of the best musicals ever. It's also one of the greatest showcases of Garland's spectacular talent. While perhaps being the best production of the lot, once we take the Garland goggles off, as far as telling the story of A Star is Born, I feel like this movie doesn't do the best job and doesn't really feel like a true adaptation. Before we get on to my top 2, here are some honourable mentions. What Price Hollywood, 1932. I couldn't make this video without giving a brief spotlight to the film which is commonly regarded as the original inspiration for the Star is Born story. What Price isn't identical to Star with a vastly different story, but the main themes and ideas are very much the same, with a young waitress being discovered by a successful filmmaker with a declining career. This one is more of an unrequited love story, with only the filmmaker falling for his new starlet and not really the other way around. This is a beautiful and charming classic film which is worth a watch, but there's a reason that Star wound up the more classic of the two. I think it would be unfair to rank What Price against the true versions of Star, just as ranking Akira Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress in a list of Star Wars movies would be. The similarities are there, enough so that the film studio RKO threatened to sue the producers of Star for plagiarism, but at the end of the day, this one has a different plot and narrative beats that move in different directions. What Price Hollywood is absolutely worth checking out if you've seen all the versions of A Star Is Born and you love them all and you just need one more fix, even if it is just for a little context on the history of the tried and tested Hollywood formula. Also worth mentioning, the film's director George Cukor, while turning down the opportunity to direct the 1937 feature, would go on to direct the 1957 remake. The Artist, 2011. Winning the Best Picture Oscar in 2012, The Artist is a love letter to classic cinema and plays homage to many great Hollywood films. The movie sees a successful silent filmmaker falling in love with an upcoming starlet as his career fades during the introduction of talking features, finding its story inspired by the Star formula in a purposely obvious way while managing to avoid being a traditional remake. There's no alcoholism or deep depression here, it's actually a more uplifting feature where the similarities lie only in the narrative formula, which it tackles very well. For further viewing, The Artist will give a broader understanding of the impact A Star Is Born has had on cinema as a whole. And now it's back to our ranking. And coming in at number 2, 1937, Janet Gaynor and Fredric March. If we discount What Price Hollywood, this is Hollywood's very first take on the Star Is Born story, and most certainly one of the best. This is the only iteration of the feature that can't be considered a musical or music feature, as it heavily focuses on the early days of cinema, with our starlet rising through the ranks of Hollywood's elite before the days of the big band musicals featured in Garland's version. As a lover of classic cinema, I simply adore this feature. It has the true magic and romanticism of the pictures of the time and really suits the story, which was originally developed as a scathing look at Hollywood's filthy underbelly. As I've mentioned, each version of Star is a portrait of its own particular era, and the Star Is Born story really feels like it belongs in the old Hollywood world. Performances are fantastic, with Gaynor and March delivering some of the best characterizations of the entire lot, and the story moves in great directions and at great speed, without overlong musical numbers to slow it down. At just under 2 hours, this is the shortest take on the movie so far, and the length truly helps convey the rapid, frenzied rise to fame of the starlet and even sharper decline of her mentor. For a film of its time, A Star Is Born is quite dark and scathing, turning the classic Hollywood glamour film on its head. A very interesting and refreshing watch. This story works incredibly well as a straight-out drama. And coming in as my favourite version of A Star Is Born, 2018, Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Wow, this certainly wasn't expected. The most recent remake of A Star Is Born has easily become my absolute favourite effort of the entire series of films. 2018's Star Is Born takes cues and foundations from literally every one of the past films and takes their biggest strengths and learns from their biggest weaknesses to capture the essence of what makes this story so special. To me, this is the most relatable, most engaging, most passionate, and most honest version of the story so far, and that could quite possibly be because this movie, as the past ones, is a true reflection of our current times. Where other versions favour putting focus on one character over the other, sometimes forgetting to even spotlight their relationship, Bradley Cooper brings a visionary film style that manages to put you right in the shoes of both characters and gets skin deep on both individually, as well as delving headfirst into their tumultuous relationship. This version delivers the most rounded story and the greatest examination of both the ups and downs of stardom, with a very candid exploration of mental health and addiction. At 2.5 hours, the same length as the Streisand version, this one still manages to be completely gripping and engaging, as it still finds itself moving at frenetic speed with brilliant musical numbers that complement and flow with the movie's narrative instead of slowing it down. Gaga and Cooper deliver authentic and stunning performances and help make this one enormous rollercoaster ride of all the emotions you ever thought possible and all the ones you never thought were. I really loved this movie, and if you did too, I highly recommend checking out at least one or two of the previous versions. And at that, we come to the end of my own personal ranking of the Star Is Born films. Agree with what I had to say? Disagree with all of it? Fire away in the comments below and let me know your own personal thoughts and rankings of the movies. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, you like what you've seen, you'd like to see more like this in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now, and also hit that like button down below if you're feeling extra generous. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.